Silvercrest Hotel stood like a gleaming monument in the center of the city, tall and proud with its glass exterior catching every shimmer of daylight and every reflection of the streetlights at night. People walking past often stopped just to admire how grand it looked, as if it were a palace built for modern royalty. Inside, the lobby was even more breathtaking. Soft golden lights glowed from the ceiling, casting warm colors across the marble floors that were polished so well you could almost see your reflection in them. Every corner of the hotel smelled faintly of vanilla and fresh lilies, a perfume the staff sprayed hourly to maintain the feeling of calm luxury. Guests loved it. Families, business travelers, influencers, and wealthy tourists all chose the Silvercrest for the comfort, privacy, and the reputation it held for giving every visitor an unforgettable experience. But the hotel had another reputation too, one that only staff whispered about after their shifts, when they finally stepped outside and breathed the ordinary air of the city. What looked beautiful on the outside carried a coldness beneath the surface. Some nights, a few of the housekeepers claimed they heard footsteps in empty hallways, soft and slow, as if someone was pacing just out of sight. Others swore that lights flickered in rooms that had no guests booked. These stories often ended with nervous laughter and dismissive shrugs, because no one wanted to admit just how unsettled they felt inside the walls of the Silvercrest. Despite this, people kept coming. Luxury always attracted crowds, even if something strange lived under its shine. On a cloudy Wednesday evening, a man named Daniel Shaw stepped through the revolving doors of the hotel. He was in his mid-40s, broad-shouldered, wearing a tailored dark suit that made him look like a high-ranking executive traveling for something important. His eyes looked tired, the way someone looks after too many hours on planes and too many nights in hotel rooms. Still, he carried himself with calm confidence. The receptionist greeted him with the polite smile she had rehearsed 100 times that day, confirmed his booking, and handed him the keycard to room 908. Daniel thanked her with a nod and headed toward the elevators, his single black suitcase rolling behind him. The security cameras captured every step he took. He pressed the elevator button, waited quietly, entered the elevator, and stood with his back against the wall. A moment later, the elevator doors closed, and that was the last time the camera saw him alive. He reached the 9th floor at 8:07 p.m. and walked down the hallway without rushing. The hall was silent except for the soft hum of air conditioning and the distant ding of another elevator stopping on a different floor. Daniel swiped into his room, stepped inside, and shut the door. Nothing unusual. Nothing strange. Just another guest ending another long day. The next morning unfolded like any other. Guests lined up for breakfast, business travelers hurried through the lobby, and staff moved from floor to floor checking off tasks with practiced rhythm. At 10:15 a.m., a housekeeper named Maria knocked on room 908 to begin her cleaning schedule. She waited, knocked again, and when she heard no response, she used her master key to unlock the door. What she saw inside made her gasp so loudly that nearby guests opened their doors to check what had happened. Daniel Shaw lay on the floor beside the bed. His eyes were open wide, staring at nothing. His body was positioned strangely, as if he had collapsed without warning. There were no bruises, no cuts, no blood, no sign of a struggle. His clothes were neat. His tie was still straight. But something felt wrong. The room was too clean. Not just tidy, clean in a way that did not seem natural. The bed sheets had no wrinkles. The bathroom towels hung perfectly straight, untouched. Even the glasses on the counter looked polished. The room felt like a display, like something arranged, not lived in. When hotel security arrived, they checked for Daniel's phone and suitcase but found neither. Guests do not simply vanish with their belongings while leaving their body behind. Police were called immediately. Officers questioned Maria, the receptionist, the night staff, and anyone else who might have seen Daniel. But everyone said the same thing. Nothing strange happened. No one heard anything. No one saw him leave the room. There was no sign of forced entry. The keycard record showed only Daniel entering his room. Detectives requested an autopsy. They expected a heart attack, maybe a stroke. But when the report came back, it shocked everyone involved. Daniel's body contained traces of a rare neurotoxin, one so uncommon that even the lead investigator had never seen it used in a case. It couldn't be bought easily. It couldn't be made without knowledge. It also acted quickly and left almost no visible signs of struggle or pain. Whoever used it knew exactly what they were doing. The hotel management attempted to handle the situation quietly. They reassured guests that this was a tragic but isolated medical issue, hoping the story wouldn't spread and damage their high-end reputation. Still, fear has a way of slipping through walls. Rumors swelled. Some guests checked out early. Others whispered to each other in hallways, wondering how a man could die so mysteriously inside a locked room in one of the safest hotels in the city. While the police tried to piece together Daniel's last hours, unanswered questions grew heavier. How did the toxin enter his body? How did the killer access the room without cameras catching anything? Why was the room wiped so clean that it looked untouched even though Daniel had lived in it for at least one night? And why take his phone and suitcase but leave the body? Detectives considered the possibility of foul play from hotel staff, but background checks on the employees from that shift revealed nothing suspicious. No one had a criminal record. No one had been near room 908 at the wrong time. Every person had a clean timeline. Every movement inside the hotel was accounted for, except the killers. By late afternoon, the police sealed off the 9th floor to collect more evidence, but the silence of the hallway offered nothing. No fingerprints, no footprints, no broken locks, no chemical traces. It was as if the killer had passed through the air itself, doing their work without leaving the slightest mark. That night, as the sun set and the hotel lights glowed against the dark sky, a silent tension settled over the building. Guests walked faster through the hallways, avoiding eye contact, sensing something invisible lingering around them. Even the staff moved more cautiously, as if the shining corridors suddenly felt unfamiliar. Down in the lobby, the giant painting of the woman in the red veil watched over everyone with its mysterious, unreadable expression. Her hidden face seemed to deepen the unease in the air, though no one was sure why. The painting had been there for years, part of the hotel's original design. Most people never gave it a second glance. But that night, some swore her shadow looked longer, and her covered gaze felt heavier, almost as if she was watching the hotel breathe. No one knew it yet, but Daniel Shaw was only the first sign of something far more terrifying. The Silvercrest Hotel had just begun revealing the darkness it had hidden for years. The silence that settled over the Silvercrest after Daniel Shaw's death lasted only a short time before the hotel's rhythm returned to normal. Guests moved through the hallways with their suitcases, workers resumed their shifts, and the polished surfaces once again reflected calm luxury. But beneath the surface, tension remained like a trace of smoke in the air. Staff members avoided discussing the tragedy directly, yet every glance, every hurried whisper showed they hadn't forgotten. The management insisted it had been an isolated incident. They offered comforting phrases, upgraded rooms, and free drinks at the bar to soften any lingering fear, trying to erase the memory before it spread. But horror has a way of returning when no one expects it. 2 weeks after Daniel was found dead, the Silvercrest welcomed a young couple from Spain, Lucio and Mateo Vargas. They were newlyweds, glowing with excitement and documenting every moment of their honeymoon. Their laughter echoed in the lobby the moment they entered, energetic and warm, drawing smiles from the staff. They checked into a suite on the 15th floor, one of the hotel's most luxurious rooms. From the outside, they looked like the kind of couple that filled the building with life. They captured photos of the chandelier, the rooftop pool, the velvet lounge chairs, and posted them online with captions full of joy. No one could have guessed they would be the next victims of a mystery that had only begun to unfold. On the 3rd day of their stay, housekeeping knocked on the couple's suite door. There was no answer. It wasn't unusual. Many guests slept late or had breakfast in bed. But the housekeeper, Lena, noticed something strange. The breakfast tray she placed outside earlier that morning remained untouched. Usually, guests inside the suite at least pulled it in. She hesitated, knocked again, and when there was still no response, she used her master key. The moment she opened the door, a suffocating heaviness greeted her. The room was silent in a way that didn't feel natural. She stepped inside slowly, calling out their names, her voice echoing off the walls. Lucio and Mateo lay on the bed, side by side, eyes half open but lifeless. Their bodies were stiff, their skin pale, their expressions frozen in a strange mixture of confusion and terror. Like Daniel, they showed no signs of struggle. No bruises, no injuries, no disturbance in the room. Everything looked perfectly arranged. Their clothes were folded neatly on a chair. Their luggage stood untouched. Their phone chargers were plugged into the wall with no devices attached. It was as if someone had removed all traces of their final moments. Hotel security arrived before the screams from Lena had even faded. Managers rushed into the suite, shock written on every face. This time, panic rose faster than they could suppress it. 2 deaths in 2 weeks could not be explained away. But once again, the room offered no clues. No forced entry. No fingerprints. No broken locks. Everything was clean, neat, and eerily silent. The police were called back to the hotel, bringing a sense of dread with them. Guests whispered nervously in the hallways. Some tried to leave early, but the hotel convinced them to stay, promising it was all being handled. But rumors carried more weight than promises. People started searching online for details about the previous death, and soon, the hotel staff realized the story had become bigger than management could hide. The toxicology reports arrived quickly, revealing the same rare neurotoxin found in Daniel Shaw's body. The investigators were stunned. The chance of such a substance being involved twice in the same building was practically impossible, unless someone inside knew exactly how to use it. The possibility of a repeating pattern chilled everyone, from the police officers to the front desk employees who had smiled so comfortably just days earlier. Detective Sarah Nolan entered the case at this point. She was a woman known for her quiet intensity and her ability to see what others missed. Her reputation for solving strange and complicated cases preceded her. People often underestimated her calm demeanor, but she had a mind that never rested. She walked into the Silver Crest with a small notebook and curious eyes that scanned everything, from the check-in counters to the large golden painting behind the reception desk. The woman in the red veil and the artwork seemed to watch her too, with a silent, unsettling presence. Sarah began by reviewing the guest list for the last 6 months. As she scanned names, dates, and room assignments, something clicked in her mind. She noticed a series of notes marked as medical emergencies scattered across the list. 8 in total. All declared natural deaths or unexplained collapses. None of them had drawn real suspicion at the time. But now, with 2 confirmed murders involving the same toxin, these past incidents felt too suspicious to ignore. She dug deeper. All 8 previous victims had checked in alone. All were found inside their rooms. All had died quietly, without any disturbance reported. She spent her first few hours at the hotel walking the hallways where the couple had stayed. The 15th floor looked just as beautiful as the others, with thick carpets, dim lighting, and golden room numbers that gave an impression of elegance. But to Sarah, the silence felt heavy. She stood outside the couple suite for several minutes, taking in the atmosphere, imagining what had happened inside those walls. Something about the flow of the hotel bothered her. The cameras monitored every hallway and elevator, but the angles left pockets of blind spots. The keycard system was advanced, yet too many staff members had access to master keys. The layout was perfect for luxury but also perfect for someone hiding in plain sight. She interviewed the employees one by one. The receptionist who checked in the couple. The bellboy who carried their luggage. The housekeepers who saw them in the hallways. The security guards who monitored the cameras. None of them recalled anything unusual. Everyone seemed genuinely shocked, yet the consistency of their answers bothered her. It was almost too clean. As she walked back through the lobby that evening, her eyes returned to the painting of the woman in the red veil. The artwork was striking. The veil covered most of the woman's face, only exposing her lips and part of her chin. Her posture was elegant, her hand extended as if offering a secret. But the longer Sarah stared, the more a cold feeling grew in her stomach. Something about the painting felt off. It was as if it held meaning that no one else had noticed. She hadn't realized yet that the painting had changed. It was subtle, barely noticeable. A faint new line on the veil, a shadow that hadn't been there before. No one saw the artist who had touched it. The hotel claimed the painting hadn't been altered at all. But Sarah's instincts whispered otherwise. As night settled over the Silver Crest, Sarah stayed in the hotel to monitor the camera feeds personally. The corridors seemed calm. Guests moved normally. Staff performed their duties. Nothing stood out as a threat, but the building felt too quiet. An uneasy kind of quiet, like the moment before a storm settles over a city. She kept reviewing the security footage, rewinding, pausing, fast-forwarding. Hours passed before she noticed something strange. The 9th floor hallway, the one where Daniel died, had a brief flicker in the footage. Just 1 second of static, barely visible, but important enough that Sarah replayed it several times. Something had interfered with the system. She didn't know it yet, But she was standing on the edge of discovering the hotel's darkest secret. A secret hidden not just in rooms and hallways, but in the very design of the building. A secret that had been waiting for years, watching, choosing its victims carefully. The pattern was real. The killer was moving silently, and the Silvercrest Hotel was no longer just a crime scene. Detective Sarah Nolan had spent 2 full days inside the Silvercrest Hotel, and each hour tightened the knot in her chest a little more. She had solved difficult cases before, but something about this place unsettled her in ways she couldn't quite explain. The building felt alive, as if it were breathing softly behind her, watching every step she took with invisible eyes. The carpets muffled every sound, the ceiling stretched high above like silent witnesses, and the hallways seemed to curve just slightly, enough to make her lose her sense of direction if she didn't pay attention. The Silvercrest was beautiful, yes, but beautiful in the way a perfectly crafted mask could hide a monstrous face beneath it. After reviewing the old case files, Sarah met with the head of security, Mark Hensley, in a small office tucked behind the reception desk. He was a tall man with a stern expression and tired eyes that revealed sleepless nights. He had worked at the hotel for nearly 10 years and insisted he had never seen anything suspicious before the recent deaths. But his voice betrayed him. Something was bothering him, something he either didn't want to say or didn't know how to explain. Sarah asked him about the camera blind spots, particularly the flicker she saw from the 9th floor. Mark rubbed his temples and admitted that the system had been acting strangely for months. Small glitches, quick outages, lights turning off for no reason, automatic doors opening without anyone near them. The maintenance team wrote everything off as technical problems, but when Sarah pressed further, Mark hesitated. Finally, he admitted that a few staff members believed the hotel was haunted. Sarah didn't bother hiding her skepticism, but she filed it away in her mind. People often blamed ghosts when they didn't want to blame something much more real. The 15th floor, where Lucio and Mateo Vargas died, weighed heavily on Sarah's thoughts. She returned there late in the afternoon, walking slowly down the long hallway. The lights cast a warm glow on the walls, but the warmth felt fake, almost painted on. She paused outside the suite where the couple had stayed. There was no police tape now, only a silent door with a golden number. She unlocked it with a special authorization card and stepped inside, breathing carefully, as if the room itself were listening. The air felt heavy, as if the tragedy that had happened days ago still lingered in the corners. She examined everything. The chairs, the bed, the curtains, the bathroom. Nothing seemed disturbed. No fingerprints, no stray fibers, no signs of poisoning in the food or drinks. It was as if death had walked silently into the room, touched the couple gently, and left without leaving a mark. She replayed the possibilities in her mind. Someone had entered and administered the neurotoxin. Someone who knew how to avoid cameras, keys, and leaving evidence. Someone with knowledge and patience. As she inspected the room further, Sarah noticed something odd. A small panel behind one of the nightstands was slightly misaligned. She pulled the table away and examined the panel closely. It looked like a maintenance access point, but the edges were dusty except for a clear set of lines around the frame, as if it had been opened recently. Her heart beat faster. She pried it open and peered inside. Behind the wall was a narrow passage. It was dark and cramped, just big enough for someone slim to move through. Air flowed faintly from deeper inside, cold and unsettling. She took out her phone's flashlight and aimed it into the darkness. The passage stretched toward the next room, then split off into multiple directions behind the walls. It was a hidden network, a secret skeleton beneath the hotel's perfect skin. The realization sent chills down her arms. Someone could move through these spaces. Someone could enter rooms without using the doors. Someone could watch guests without ever being seen. Sarah whispered softly to herself that the killer didn't need keycards. They didn't need cameras. They had their own system, built into the hotel itself. She crawled into the passage carefully, moving slowly. Dust brushed her clothes, and the silence felt unnatural, as if even the sound of her breathing was too loud. She followed the narrow corridor for several meters until she reached a small vent that looked into another suite. Her flashlight revealed faint fingerprints on the vent's metal frame. Someone had been here recently. Someone had watched through this vent. Someone had planned every move with precision. Sarah backed out of the passage and returned to the room, her mind racing. The existence of hidden corridors changed everything. She hurried downstairs to confront the hotel's management. The manager, a polished woman named Evelyn Hart, listened with disbelief. According to her, the Silver Crest had no secret passageways in its architectural designs. The building was supposed to be modern and straightforward. But Sarah insisted. Evelyn reluctantly agreed to meet with the hotel's original architect, who was now retired. Before that meeting, Sarah decided to investigate the 9th floor again. She walked past room 908, replaying Daniel Shaw's final moments in her mind. She revisited the sequence of events, the stillness of the hallway, the flicker on the cameras, the perfect cleanliness of the room, the missing luggage. None of it fit a normal murder. She examined the wall outside the room and found another panel, this one smaller and even better concealed. Beneath a layer of wallpaper, she felt a slight square outline. She cut into the wallpaper carefully and uncovered another entrance to the hidden network. The killer had access to every floor, every guest, every room. Night fell slowly over the city, and the hotel lights glowed against the dark like a beacon of wealth and comfort. But for Sarah, the building now felt like a labyrinth designed by someone who understood shadows better than light. She returned to her temporary office inside the hotel and began mapping the hidden corridors, marking key rooms, vent locations, and possible entry points. The network was too intentional to be accidental. Someone had constructed it with purpose. For observation. For control. For hunting. While she worked, Mark rushed into the office with panic in his eyes. Another guest had gone missing. A woman named Claire Morgan, staying on the 11th floor, had not been seen since lunchtime. She didn't answer her phone. She didn't respond to knocks. Her door was locked from the inside, but she wasn't there. Sarah grabbed her flashlight and ran to the 11th floor with Mark following closely behind. They opened Claire's room and found it empty, spotless, and silent. Her bag was still there, her shoes, her tablet, but she was gone. Sarah rushed to the walls and searched for the hidden panels. It didn't take long. Behind the bathroom mirror, she found a narrow opening leading into darkness. She aimed her flashlight into the space, but stopped when she saw something that made her breath catch. A single shoe lay on the floor of the passage, small and elegant, consistent with Claire's style. But what froze Sarah wasn't the shoe. It was the faint reflection of eyes deep in the corridor. Someone was watching. Someone standing still, hidden just beyond the flashlight's reach. The shape didn't move, didn't blink. It simply stared. Sarah stepped back slowly. When she aimed the light again, the eyes were gone. The passage was empty. Claire Morgan was still missing. The killer was inside the walls. And Sarah now understood the truth that had been whispering through the Silver Crest since the beginning. The murderer wasn't just using the hotel. Detective Aisha Khan had spent the entire night replaying every detail in her mind, unable to shake the eerie connection between the victims. The rain had returned to Karachi, falling hard against the windows of the investigation room as she laid out photos, documents, and interview notes across the table. Each piece felt like a puzzle fragment, and though she could sense the overall picture forming, a critical part was still missing. The luxury hotel where the murders had taken place seemed too pristine, too polished, too practiced at maintaining a clean image. Aisha had always believed that buildings held memories, even if the people inside them pretended not to. And something about this hotel felt as though its walls were holding years of dark secrets. She returned to the hotel early in the morning, long before most guests had woken. The corridors were quiet, the lights dim, and the polished floors reflected her footsteps like faint shadows chasing her. She headed straight to the security room, a cold space filled with monitors, blinking lights, and the soft hum of machinery. The head of hotel security, Imran Bashir, greeted her with forced politeness. His eyes were tired, but there was something else in them, something guarded. Aisha asked for the complete footage from the nights of both murders. Imran hesitated for a fraction of a second, something barely noticeable, but Aisha caught it. He muttered something about corrupted files and technical issues before turning to one of the monitors to pull up what he claimed was the only remaining footage. Aisha leaned closer as the video played. In it, a shadowy figure moved down a hallway where one of the victims had been found. The figure wore a hood, its face blurred by either poor resolution or deliberate tampering. The movement was slow, controlled, almost calculated. Aisha narrowed her eyes. Something felt off. The timestamp flickered strangely before stabilizing. She asked Imran if she could have the raw files transferred to her team. He nodded, but the stiffness in his posture didn't go unnoticed. As she turned to leave, he asked if she was getting close to solving the case. His tone was casual, but Aisha heard the strain beneath it. She simply responded that justice always finds its way, even in the darkest corners. Outside the security room, Aisha received a message from her investigative partner, Officer Daniel. He had been digging into the victims' histories and had uncovered something unexpected. All three victims, despite their very different backgrounds, had attended a private charity gala at this same hotel several months ago. The event had been exclusive and hosted by the hotel's owner, the influential and mysterious businessman Tariq Nawaz. Aisha immediately asked Daniel to compile everything about that event, every guest, every sponsor, every staff member who worked that night. Before she could leave the hotel, the manager, Mira Hussein, caught up with her. Mira seemed unusually anxious, wringing her hands as she spoke. She said some employees were starting to panic because rumors were spreading about ghosts and curses haunting the hotel. Aisha almost laughed, not because she found it funny, but because she knew fear could twist people's minds. Still, Mira's trembling voice told her there was more. When Aisha pressed her, Mira admitted that the hotel had quietly settled a series of lawsuits years ago, all involving claims of harassment and dangerous working conditions. She insisted they were misunderstandings, exaggerated by disgruntled ex-employees. But Aisha noticed the way her voice cracked, how her eyes darted around as if expecting someone to be listening. Later that afternoon, Aisha met Daniel in their office. He had gathered images and details from the charity gala, and together, they scanned the crowd captured in photographs. Wealthy donors, celebrities, politicians, socialites, and a sea of hotel staff. Then Aisha saw something that made her freeze. In the corner of one photo, partially hidden behind a floral arrangement, was the same hooded figure from the security footage. The same posture, the same unsettling stillness, but this time their face was entirely turned away. The gala had been months before the murders, yet this person had been there, blending into the background like a ghost moving between the living. Aisha leaned back, realization slowly taking shape. The murders were not random. Someone had been planning this far longer than anyone had suspected. But why these victims? What had they done or witnessed at that gala? Their investigation led them to an ex-employee named Sana, who had resigned shortly after the charity event. Sana had refused to come to the police station but agreed to meet Aisha and Daniel in a quiet cafe far from the hotel. When she arrived, she kept her hood up and her face half hidden. Her voice was shaky as she explained that on the night of the gala, she had seen something she was never meant to see. In one of the private lounges, several hotel executives and influential guests were engaged in a heated argument. She didn't catch the full conversation, but she remembered one chilling line: "If anyone talks, all of this falls apart." She also remembered seeing the hooded person that night, moving in and out of restricted areas, but every time she tried to get a closer look, they vanished. Sana believed the murders were connected to whatever secret the hotel had been hiding from the gala night. She begged Aisha to be careful, warning her that powerful people were involved, people who would do anything to protect themselves. After the meeting, Aisha felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This was no longer just a murder case. It was a cover-up, a shadow network, a story woven with fear and silence. The hotel, with all its glamour and luxury, was built on secrets no one wanted uncovered. That evening, back at the station, Daniel informed Aisha that he had successfully recovered fragments of the corrupted security footage. As they watched, the grainy images came to life. There was the hooded figure again, but this time something crucial was visible. As the person passed under a light, half their face appeared briefly. A scar. A distinctive diagonal scar running from the cheek to the temple. Aisha felt a chill wash over her. She had seen someone with that exact scar before, but she couldn't place where. It lingered in her memory like a whisper refusing to be heard. Hours passed as she sifted through past interview logs, staff records, and witness statements until finally she found it. The scar belonged to a former hotel employee named Zubair Malik. He had been fired 3 years ago after a violent altercation with hotel management, though the official documents claimed he resigned voluntarily. He had disappeared from public records shortly afterward. Aisha's pulse quickened. If the killer was Zubair, then the motive wasn't just revenge. It was deeper, rooted in whatever had happened during his time at the hotel. And if he had been present at the charity gala, then he had been watching the victims long before their deaths. But the real shock came when she found something else. Zubair wasn't acting alone. His last known communication had been with someone currently still working at the hotel. Someone with authority. Someone with access. Someone who knew the building better than anyone else. Someone Aisha had already met. She stared at the name on the screen, her breath caught in her chest. Suddenly, everything made sense. The hesitation, the excuses, the missing footage. The truth had been standing right in front of her the whole time. Detective Aisha Khan sat frozen as the name glowed on her laptop screen. Imran Beshe, the hotel's head of security, the man who had stood beside her, answered her questions, guided her through the footage, and pretended to cooperate at every step. Aisha felt a wave of anger and disbelief rise inside her. It was all so clear now. His delays, the corrupted files, the nervous glances, the way he always seemed to be watching her more than the investigation. He wasn't just hiding something. He was part of it. And if Zubair Malik was involved, then Imran wasn't just an accomplice. He was the one enabling everything from the inside. Before she could go further into the files, Daniel rushed into the room, breathless, his face pale. He had discovered something even worse. Aisha turned toward him, and he handed her a freshly printed report. One of the hotel guests had just filed an agent complaint. A young woman had gone missing. She had been staying in the same hallway as the previous victims. Her phone was found smashed near the service elevator. Her luggage in her room. But she was gone. The timing was no coincidence. The killer was preparing again, and this time, they were moving faster. Aisha and Daniel hurried to the hotel, weaving through the evening traffic as rain poured down again, turning the streets into a blur of headlights and reflections. The luxury hotel loomed ahead like a giant shadow. Aisha felt the tension building in her chest as she stepped inside. Everything seemed normal on the surface. Guests dined in the restaurant. Soft music played. Staff greeted people with trained smiles. But beneath the surface, something sinister pulsed like a heartbeat hidden in the walls. Aisha demanded access to all restricted areas, but Imran was nowhere to be found. Another security guard nervously claimed he had taken the night off unexpectedly. Aisha knew that was a lie. She could feel it. Every instinct inside her screamed that Imran was moving through the hotel at that very moment, preparing his next step. She and Daniel began a silent, urgent search. They moved through the hallways, down to the basement, then toward the maintenance tunnels. The hotel was far larger than it appeared to be from the outside, with hidden corridors and forgotten rooms that hadn't been used in years. As they approached the old storage wing, Aisha noticed something unusual. One of the doors, normally sealed, had a faint scratch mark near the lock. Daniel pointed to the floor. There were drops of water trailing inside, as though someone had entered recently. With her hand hovering over her gun, Aisha pushed the door open. The smell of dampness and dust rushed out. The room was dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. Old furniture, broken deco pieces, and unused equipment was stacked against the walls. And then Aisha saw it. A torn piece of fabric caught on a nail. It was from the missing woman's dress. Aisha felt her heart pound. She motioned for Daniel to check the other side of the room while she scanned the shadows. She stepped deeper inside, her flashlight slicing through the darkness. Something moved in the corner. She tensed instantly. Zubair Malik, she said quietly, addressing the figure she now recognized. The man stepped into the light slowly. His face was hardened, unshaven, and tired. The diagonal scar on his cheek glowed under the weak bulb. His eyes were cold but not wild. They held a strange mix of pain and anger. He didn't run. He didn't attack. He simply stood there as though he had been expecting her. Aisha raised her gun, but her voice stayed steady. She demanded to know where the missing guest was. Zubair simply stared at her before speaking in a calm, almost resigned tone. "You came sooner than I thought." Aisha repeated her question, and finally, he answered. "You don't understand," he said. "I never wanted to kill anyone. Not at first. But people like them. They leave no choice." Daniel moved closer, but Zubair's eyes never left Aisha. He began to talk slowly, as though carrying the weight of years inside him. He explained that 3 years ago, he had discovered illegal activities inside the hotel. Corruption, blackmail, an exploitation involving high-profile guests. He had confronted the management, believing justice would be served. Instead, he was beaten, framed, and fired silently. His reputation destroyed. His family threatened. His life shattered. And Imran Bashir had been the one leading the punishment. He told me I would disappear if I ever spoke again, Zubair whispered. But I survived. And I watched. And I waited. Aisha felt the truth settling like cold air around her. The hotel, with all its beauty and wealth, had been hiding the darkest sins. But that still didn't explain why the victims died. Zubair said the victims were not innocent. They were among the people who had covered up the crimes from the charity gala. The businesswoman had helped hide evidence. The wealthy guest had bribed management. The third victim had participated in the threats. They destroyed my life, he said quietly, and many others too. Aisha tightened her grip. She understood his pain but not his actions. She demanded again to know where the missing guest was, reminding him she had nothing to do with his past. For the first time, Zubair's face softened. She's alive, he said. I didn't touch her. I just needed Imran to panic. I needed him to show himself. He's the real monster. He's the one who hurt people. But nobody ever looks at the security chief. Before Aisha could process his words, her radio crackled loudly. An urgent voice announced that Imran had been spotted fleeing toward the rooftop. Daniel immediately sprinted out of the room. Aisha looked at Zubair one last time. He put his hands up, offering no resistance. Go, he said. End this, before he ruined someone else's life. Aisha handcuffed him quickly and called backup to secure him and locate the missing woman. Then she ran. She moved through the deserted hallways, up the emergency stairs, her breath sharp and heavy. The rain hammered the windows harder now, as though urging her upward. When she burst onto the rooftop, the wind hit her like a wall. Rain soaked her instantly, blurring her vision. Imran stood near the edge, his uniform wet, his face twisted with fear and rage. When he saw Aisha, he pointed a shaking gun at her. She raised her hand slightly, keeping her stance steady. She demanded he drop the weapon. Imran shouted over the storm, claiming he had done everything to protect the hotel's reputation, insisting the victims were liabilities who threatened powerful people. He screamed that Zubair was a traitor, that he deserved what happened. His voice cracked as the truth poured out. He had orchestrated the murders. He had sabotaged the footage. He had manipulated the evidence. He had turned the hotel into a hunting ground for anyone who threatened the secrets it guarded. Aisha stepped slowly toward him, speaking calmly despite the gun pointed at her. She told him it was over, that the truth had already spread beyond his reach, that he was alone now. Imran shook violently, torn between fear and defiance. Then, in a single desperate motion, he turned the gun toward himself. Before he could pull the trigger, Aisha lunged forward, knocking the weapon from his hand. It skidded across the wet floor. Imran collapsed to his knees, sobbing. Backup arrived moments later to take him into custody. Aisha stood in the rain, breathing hard as the chaos settled around her. Later, the missing woman was found alive in a locked maintenance room, shaken but unharmed. Zubair was placed under arrest, but with the full investigation now exposed, his case became far more complicated. The hotel shut down temporarily as authorities uncovered years of corruption hidden behind its luxury facade. Aisha watched the building from outside one last time. Its shining windows reflected nothing of the darkness it had held. The case was over, but its shadows remained. Justice had come, but not cleanly. In the end, the walls had finally spoken, and their story had changed everything.